welcome to the press conference for the film Valley of Love, directed by Guillaume Nicloux and starring Isabelle Huppert and Gérard Depardieu. See you later for The Little Prince.
Là, c'est bien.
Très bien.
Quelle chaleur, c'est pas possible. On se croirait dans la vallée de la mort. T'as vu la chaleur là?
Non, ça va pas mal là.
Ah non, non. Chaud. Ça sent le pognon.
Je demande à César d'amener un petit ventilo.
Oh, mais t'as petit.
Il est là le fils de Kubrick, il est là.
Ah oui?
Oui, il est là. Hein. Il m'a envoyé plein de textos. Merci beaucoup. Merci de vous installer. Je vous présente les
personnes qui sont à cette table. Partant de votre gauche, Dan Warner, comédien, l'homme qui a failli rencontrer Robert De Niro, Isabelle Huppert, Guillaume Nicloux, metteur en scène, Gérard Depardieu, je ne sais pas pourquoi tout le monde les connaît, mais ça participe du rituel, et Sylvie Pialat, la productrice du film.
Sylvie Pialat, the producer of the film.
Guillaume, ce film, j'ai l'impression, peut-être que ça découle aussi d'un désir de cinéma. C'est un film sur la croyance, c'est un film qui réunit Isabelle et Gérard quelques années après Nicloux. C'est un film où la réalité se mêle parfois à la fiction. Est-ce que, alors, dans le dossier de presse, vous expliquez que cette idée vous est venue quand vous étiez à la veille de la mort. Est-ce que tout ça s'est mélangé à un moment donné pour donner le film qu'on a vu?
How did everything come together to create this film?
Le lieu a été l'élément déclencheur
The
de
place
cette
was
histoire.
the triggering
Un
fact,
événement particulier qui s'est produit
a specific event
dans un des décors dans lequel on a
that took
tourné.
place in one of the places where we filmed, led me to make this film when I came back from a trip.
Installé progressivement.
And then things gradually came together.
Et de façon assez naturelle, je
In
me
a
suis
fairly natural manner.
débarrassé d'une forme d'handicap que j'avais pu
I got
avoir
rid of a kind of handicap I
à me
had.
protéger et à utiliser souvent le film de genre comme
Protected
prétexte pour
myself. I
explorer
used genre films to
humaines
protect myself
des
when
personnages.
exploring human
Donc là, j'ai le
relationships.
sentiment d'avoir été peut-être
Here I have the feeling
un peu plus sincère
I was a bit more sincere
avec moi-même et avec
with
l'histoire que je voulais
and
raconter.
the story I wanted to
Est-ce
tell.
que le processus du film qui est passé
What
par
about
différents endroits, notamment un
general
comédien qui
process
était
in the
prévu
film
et qui n'était pas
when
Gérard, est-ce que ce
actor who was not
processus-là, avec
Gérard
l'aide de
was
Sylvie,
planned?
qui a aussi fait rebondir le film, a
How did
participé
things work out
à
with
l'élaboration du
Sylvie
scénario,
as
à
well
l'atmosphère, au
in
climat?
terms of working out
Est-ce que les choses
the
sont si
screenplay,
imprégnées l'une dans l'autre?
the atmosphere?
Oui, complètement, parce qu'il y a eu
Everything is very
c'est
interlinked.
totalement introspectif me concernant, c'est-à-dire qu'il y a eu un cheminement.
Things are very introspective.
J'ai essayé de conserver cette
I
rétention un peu
tried
maladive qui
to
m'empêche d'aller
keep
vers
this kind
vers
of
une
inner
exposition plus
tension.
personnelle de ce que je raconte.
I didn't want
Donc il m'a fallu un petit peu de temps pour m'apercevoir que
display
finalement,
my innermost emotions in a
d'une
way.
certaine façon, Gérard correspondait
Gérard, in
à ce que j'avais
fact,
vécu de façon très très puissante
depicts what
dans
I experienced
ce
in
canyon,
a very strong manner
au
in this
moment où j'ai
canyon
visité la première fois
when
ce
I
lieu.
visited
Et
it for the very
j'avais sans
first
doute
time.
beaucoup de craintes
No
de
doubt,
m'exposer
I had a
autant
lot
à
of
cette
fears
représentation
to
par le biais de Gérard.
show
Donc j'ai
this via
utilisé
Gérard.
au début une sorte de subterfuge
In the
qui passait
beginning,
par
I used
une
a sort of
mythologie
a trick.
cinéphilique un peu plus récurrente puisqu'il s'agissait de
I resorted
de
to a
Ryan
kind of
O'Neill, mais tout ça n'était
mythology
qu'un
by
leurre finalement et
O'Neill.
que
But that was
très rapidement
actually
les choses se sont
perhaps
imposées pour que j'aille
a mistake,
me
and
confronter d'une
soon
façon
I
beaucoup
realized
plus
that I would
sincère.
have to
Et,
face things in a much
et
more
finalement,
sincere way.
Gérard est le noyau dur
Gérard
du film.
is the
d'une certaine
hardcore
façon,
of the film in a
puisque
sense,
c'est lié réellement à ce que j'ai vu et à ce que j'ai vécu
because
là-bas.
it's linked to what I truly
j'ai
saw
pas
and
envie de rentrer dans les
experienced
détails,
in that
mais,
place. I don't
il y
want
a
to
une
go into the
correspondance
details,
évidente
But there is an
ma
obvious
rencontre avec
link
Gérard et
between my meeting with Gérard
la finalité du film.
and the purpose of
Et
the
on va
film.
venir à Gérard. Isabelle, vous, par contre,
Isabelle,
vous étiez dans ce projet. En tout cas, Guillaume, vous en avez
You
parlé
were
assez
part
tôt,
of this
notamment
project
lorsque vous
early
avez fait
on.
la religieuse. Donc, vous avez
Guillaume talked to
suivi
you about
ce
it when you
processus.
did a prior project
Est-ce que c'est une
together.
façon particulière, du coup, de travailler, d'aborder
Is
un
it
personnage quand on passe par
special
toutes ces stades, des films qui se
to
font, qui se font
work
pas,
on
qui
a
changent de
character
comédien,
when
puis de
a
retrouver
film
Gérard,
goes through so
finalement.
many different stages, and then you ended up with Gérard?
m'en a parlé pendant qu'on tournait
Yes,
la
Guillaume
religieuse, et puis il est
talked to me
assez
about this when we were shooting La
obsessionnel,
Religieuse,
Guillaume. Enfin,
and he's quite obsessional.
C'était un peu comme une idée fixe.
Guillaume
Donc, il me
had a
reparlait
sort of
tout le
an
temps de
idée
ce-
fixe. He kept
de ce
talking
projet,
to me about
ça
this
n'était qu'au
project,
stade de projet, il m'a pas
harping
tout
on
de
it.
suite donné
It
le
was just
scénario.
a
À l'époque,
project at
c'était
the
pas-
time.
Il n'était pas prévu de le faire dans un
He
premier temps
hadn't
avec
planned
Gérard.
initially to do
Mais
the
il me
film
parlait
with
d'un
Gérard,
voilà,
but he
d'un
talked to
couple qui
me
voulait
about a
réunir
couple
dans la vallée de la
that he
mort.
wanted to bring
C'était déjà
together
assez
in Death
insolite,
Valley. That
pour
was quite
que
strange
déjà
and
ça
odd.
Enfin, je m'y voyais, voilà.
And
Il
I
m'a dit peu
could
de choses
project
dessus, mais,
myself into that kind of a
je crois que
situation.
c'était la rencontre avec le
I think,
le
therefore,
décor avant tout.
that it was a meeting with the
Souvent,
set
le
above
cinéma,
all,
ça-
with the place.
Ça part de ça, de choses un peu
Films
inattendues,
often talk about
d'une histoire qu'on
unexpected
projette dans un
things,
décor, ça peut être un
a
paysage,
tale
ça peut
that's
être une maison, ça
projected
peut être
on
un
a
lieu.
given
Et,
place. It
et
can be
très
a
vite, on se
landscape
voit
or what have you.
peupler ce décor. Bon, il se trouve que moi,
And
je connaissais la
then
vallée de la
the
mort, j'y
set
étais
is
déjà
filled
allée.
in. I knew Death
Donc,
Valley. I'd already
je
been there.
visualisais assez bien
So I could
l'endroit,
visualize the
et
place quite
j'imaginais ce
easily.
que ça pouvait avoir de ressorts romanesques.
I could readily
et fantastique,
imagine
parce que c'est un
how
paysage,
fantastic and
on se
Romanesque
passe
the
sur
setting was.
quasiment sur une autre planète dans la vallée de la mort.
You feel when you're in
Rien-
Death Valley
y a
that you're on
rien-
a different
on
planet
peut se
practically.
raccrocher à rien. C'est
It's amazing. It's totally different.
comme un désert.
It's like a
c'est,
desert.
La chaleur, évidemment, est
The
un
heat
élément déterminant. Donc tout ça
is a decisive
concourt
element.
à fabriquer de la fiction. Et en
All
même temps, je
this
savais
is
aussi que
conducive to fiction. At the same
son
time,
l'idée de Guillaume Nicloux, c'était
Guillaume Nicloux's idea
d'envisager des personnages plutôt comme
was
des personnes, ce qui me plaisait
to
bien.
have characters who were
Parce que
real
c'est
people. And I
Déjà,
like
ce que j'ai
that
envie de faire
idea.
d'une manière générale,
It's in
c'est
general what I
d'approcher les personnages
enjoy
d'une manière
doing.
quasiment hyper réaliste.
I like to
pour
portray
échapper à
people in a
l'idée que
hyper-realistic way.
Le personnage, qui est toujours une notion abstraite, s'interposerait entre soi
I
et
don't want the
et
idea
l'aventure du film.
of
Donc lui,
an
c'était son idée de départ,
abstract
c'était qu'on
character
s'appelle
interfering with the
Gérard et
film.
Isabelle, et ça crée
So,
évidemment un
That was what he had in
sentiment
mind,
de
the strong link
proximité. Ça
between
ne veut pas dire que
Gérard
la
and
fiction n'est
Isabelle.
pas à l'œuvre,
Fiction
mais ça crée
is present as well
d'emblée
in the film.
un aspect documentaire sur le film.
However, because you have this landscape,
évidemment,
there's
le
a
film n'est pas.
documentary
C'est pas
dimension.
du tout un documentaire
Obviously,
sur
the film
Gérard et
isn't
sur
a
moi.
documentary
Mais ça
about
crée
Gérard and myself at all.
Un rapport au
However,
rôle qui est très particulier.
The landscape creates a
Et puis
special
le
link
dialogue
with the characters.
participait de ça aussi, avec quelque
The
chose
dialogue too.
de l'ordre de la conversation intime dans
It's a
dans
bit
ce
like
dialogue qui
a very
concourait
intimate conversation that you see
à
in the film.
cette texture particulière du film.
And
Donc
thanks
on est
to
à la fois
this,
dans
the
une
film
chose
acquires
très,
a
très, très,
special
très
texture.
intime et très privée.
We're talking about something
Et en
very
même temps,
private, very
il y a une
intimate.
sorte de chimie assez
Yet,
heureuse comme un frottement
There
qui
is
se
a very
produit
fortunate
entre cette intimité et
chemistry
puis cette
that takes
immensité
place between this very intimate
mystérieuse,
dimension and the mysterious,
parfois douloureuse,
sometimes
quelque
painful
chose de la fois humaine
dimension
et complètement inhumaine. Voilà.
of the set, which is both
Gérard,
human
ce
and
trouble dont
inhuman
parlait
at the same
Isabelle,
time.
c'est aussi ce qui
Isabelle.
vous a donné envie de tourner et de vous plonger dans ce
Is that
dans
why
cette
you
histoire
also
un peu
wanted
singulière.
to be in the film and plunge into this
J'étais
fairly
très heureux
strange
quand
tale?
Sylvie
I was
J'avais
very
vu La
pleased
religieuse
when I was offered this part. I read La Religieuse. I'm familiar with Isabelle and this young actress who's quite extraordinary, Louise Bourgoin.
avec celle de Rivette, mais celle-ci, elle m'avait particulièrement interpellé parce que j'ai trouvé
I was really
simplicité
very
dans
struck
le récit
because I
que
found
j'aimais aussi
the tale of
cette
this
forme
film
de-
so incredibly simple,
de violence dans
yet
dans
violent
les
at the
désirs,
same time
mais aussi
in
une
people's
grande,
desires.
une sorte de mysticisme un peu gênant.
The film is shrouded in a very disturbing mysticism.
Et puis, quand Sylvie m'a apporté, j'ai tout de suite lu le script.
Sylvie gave me the script. I read it right away, of course, and I marveled at the little touch of fantasy and everything this meant for us and might elicit in us. It's a form of initiation.
De ne pas oublier, enfin de retrouver ce qui se passe, le vide qu'on a eu pendant 30 ans.
In the film, the characters revisit the void they experienced some 30 years previously. You have the death of the son. Of course, Death Valley is quite special. It's not at all like Châteauroux.
Tout ce qu'on, comment dire, de ces actes manqués, de l'oubli.
All these oversights in our lives lead to any number of questions and queries. This is a very interesting dimension which hasn't been covered in many films or even in many books, for that matter, with the exception of those by Lovecraft, for example, or in that kind of fantastic book.
De plus qu'il endure les souffrances de ses camarades de jeu. Donc ça vient, c'est du domaine fantastique.
What I'm trying to say is there is something quite fantastic in the film. And then you have all this notion of what happens after death. There are any number of questions no one can answer because no one has ever actually come back to Earth after dying.
La vallée de la mort,
with Death Valley
Isabelle,
and Isabelle,
que je n'avais pas vu. J'ai vu que, bien entendu, dans le quartier, parce qu'on fréquente le même quartier, mais c'est vrai que
I see her because we often go to the same district in Paris, but each film is a different adventure. Isabelle acts a lot, she works in the theatre. And I was very pleased to spend 4 or 5 weeks altogether. In the past, films were shot in 8 weeks. Now it's 4 or sometimes even 3. Of course, we're not machines. Maybe young people quickly get bored and they say, oh, this is taking too long. But it's a very enriching experience. It's like reading a book which asks key questions about things that we have forgotten.
Dan Warner, vous avez quelques... Sorry.
Yes.
Vous avez quelques scènes avec Isabelle
Dan
et
Warner, you
Gérard.
have some scenes with Isabelle and Gérard. You were plunged into a rather strange French film compared with American production. How did you view this special world, go about its acting?
Well, it was... should I take these off now? Yeah, it was a wonderful experience. It was I was really sort of plunged into it. Like I said before, I was not told what the film was about when I went to the audition. I was not told who was in the film. I was not told it was a French film. They said, Valley of Love. I said, oh, okay, I'll go do that. And then at the casting, I was told what was going on, which was, it seemed like they probably shouldn't have told me who was in the film and what the film was all about while I was there auditioning for the film, because it seemed like a lot of pressure all of a sudden. I would have rather not known. But it all worked out, and I went out to Death Valley, and it was quite hot, and my first scene was with Gérard by the pool, and I had not met him yet, and I had not met Guillaume yet. And it was just a really wonderful experience for me, working with Isabelle and working with Gérard and working with Guillaume. Guillaume is a wonderful director and very sort of laid back and, just lets you be an actor. Gérard was wonderful to work with. He gave me a lot of inspiration, and he was very fun on the set, and Isabelle was wonderful as well, and I just had a really good time, and I'm just happy to be part of this. And, you know, when I found out it was coming here, I was very excited. So I got on a plane and here I am.
Dame, question.
Elena, Uzbekistan TV. Question to Gérard and Isabelle. I found your work as a couple full of freshness and a surprise. So you both are such experienced actors. What work stays behind this to keep this freshness, this surprise? How much improvisation was during the process of work?
Isabelle qui veut parler d'abord.
I'll let Isabelle answer first.
C'est à la fois beaucoup de travail et pas de travail.
It was a lot of work, but not work at all.
Travail dans le sens que pour en arriver
It was a lot of work because to achieve this,
à un certain état de concentration.
We had to concentrate a lot.
Et puis il faut une mise en scène qui
and
protège
of course, the directing
ce travail.
has to protect this form of work.
C'est être là à la bonne place, tout simplement.
In other words, you have to be
finalement, ça témoigne
in the right place at the right time.
Pour ne pas dire une générosité certaine.
There has to be considerable generosity on the part of the director to achieve this freshness and this element of surprise. Organically, the director has to accompany every movement of the actors. Once you feel protected in this way, and that's the definition of great directors. Once you feel protected, the actors feel happy together. They can be themselves while the film unfolds. All this is basically up to the director. The director needs to create the right atmosphere, and I think that this was the case.
J'ai fini.
I've now finished, says Isabelle Huppert. I wanted to be an actor because I didn't ever want to work. I fell into it by chance. That's the truth of the matter. And I realized that I love living with people who do this job. And I view things as a spectator. We've talked about a given set and a given framework, and I love that situation. We're fed, housed. People do our laundry. Well, no, I don't get my clothes very dirty, and I have several suits. What I'm trying to say is that one shouldn't underestimate acting, but as far as I'm concerned, I just love it. It's a way of life for me. I fully understand what Isabelle said. It took quite a while for me to understand why I became an actor. I realized it was because, for me, it's pure pleasure, and it simplified my life, and you earn a lot of money. That's rather vulgar to say, but it's the truth.
Rodrigo Fonseca from TV Globo Brazil. Question to Mr. Depardieu. During your career, you've worked with some of the great masters of cinema, from Bertolucci to Truffaut, Chabrol. I would like to know your impression about the new generation of directors, especially the new French directors.
Je les connais pas bien.
I don't really know them very well. I don't watch all that many films. I don't see that many French films on TV or on DVD. I love series, though. I love films or actors like Bruce Willis. I didn't like him to start with, but now I find him quite extraordinary. Films with these crazy special effects and totally unbelievable characters really appeal to me.
c'est vrai que je ne rechigne pas
It's
devant un
true.
bon
I'm
Rossellini,
happy to watch a good
devant
Rossellini
un très bon Maurice
or a
Pialat.
really good Maurice Pialat.
Il y a des grands metteurs en scène, même
There
Marco
are
Ferreri,
very
je
great
me souviens, il y a des tas de
directors, even
films.
Marco Ferreri. I
Carlos
remember a
Saura,
lot of his
des,
films. Carlos Saura,
Glauber Rojas. Là,
Glauber
au
Rojas.
Brésil, il y avait des grands
In
cinéastes
Brazil,
aussi.
there were a lot of
Mais c'est
leading
sûr que je ne
directors.
rechigne pas devant ces très beaux films, mais
And
je
I'm very
veux dire
happy
que
to watch these
ma
lovely films.
consommation, elle est surtout...
However,
je crois tout ce que je vois, donc ça me suffit.
I'm happy with everything I see.
Les cinéastes de maintenant.
I'm not that familiar with current directors. Of course, I love
Son
Audiard.
physique me fait tellement penser à son père.
He resembles his father so much.
Une délicatesse,
His father was
une violence superbe. Je pense
both
que Jacques Audiard
violent
aussi, ça,
and
il a fait des
extremely
très beaux films.
delicate and gentle. Audiard has
Il y en
made
a
some
certainement,
fabulous
je peux pas
films.
citer que j'oublie, mais
There are many other
du
directors who I
moment
won't mention.
qu'ils trouvent l'argent pour monter leurs films, c'est bien.
It's great
Mais c'est
that
vrai
they
que
can find money to make their
tendances,
films
elles
current
sont
directors.
un peu banal, je dirais, pas tellement.
But perhaps I like
c'est pas
rather
du
banal
goût
things.
des cinéphiles, voilà.
I don't watch things that are typical of a cinema buff.
Hi, Matthew Hoffman from We Got This Covered. My question is for Isabelle and Gérard. In this film, you appear to be playing versions of yourselves. Did that influence the way you approach the role as opposed to when you're playing other people?
Mais on joue toujours soi-même hein, au cinéma.
You always play yourself in a
C'est vrai,
film.
oui, comme
It's
disait
true,
Gérard aussi.
as Gérard was saying.
Ça donne, c'est pas que ça donne moins de travail, mais
It's not that this involves
c'est
less
toujours un
work.
petit peu soi.
You're
Donc,
always you to an extent.
Le fait d'ailleurs, pardon Isabelle, d'avoir joué dans la chronologie, ça change.
Because the film was shot in a linear way, did that change anything? It wasn't shot in a linear manner. Nearly, but not quite.
Ça change pas grand-chose.
No, it doesn't change much.
C'était plus confortable.
It was
mais
more
c'est
comfortable.
Un peu anecdotique dans la.
But that's just a minor detail in the tale of the
Il
film.
tenait à faire la chronologie, Guillaume. Il était bloqué sur la chronologie.
Guillaume was extremely focused on the chronology. He wanted things to be shot in order. It's true, Isabelle.
Bon, parfois, je ne sais pas pourquoi, ce qui nous a empêché de
I
ne pas
don't
être que dans
know
la chronologie, je ne sais pas.
why things had to be so linear.
Non, mais on n'a pas
Maybe
fait
it was
tout
the
dans la
heat.
chronologie.
Not everything was shot in order.
Le débat est ouvert.
It seems to be an open discussion.
Ah oui.
Because of the heat, there were certain constraints. The Rangers took the temperature on the set, and sometimes they said to us, well, they have safety standards, and we couldn't film once the temperature had risen beyond a certain point. Every morning we got a big speech. We had to remain really serious and listen, like in Châteauroux.
Une question, madame là-bas.
My name is Hanna Lubakova. I'm from Radio Free Europe, Belarus. I have a question to Mr. Depardieu. Recently you said that you have a lot of similar things with Mr. Putin and that Ukraine is a part of Russia. But then, as media informed, you left Russia. So did your opinions change on Ukraine and Mr. Putin?
Je ne sais pas si Gérard va répondre. En tout
I
cas,
don't know whether Gérard is going to answer. I think we'll stick to films.
Je suis comme tout le monde, les conflits.
I'm like everybody. Conflicts are a terrible thing. I know Mr. Putin well. I like him a lot.
L'URSS, j'y vais toujours.
And I still go to the USSR, says Gérard Depardieu. That's a form of answer. I still go to Russia. He corrects himself. Let's talk only about the film, which is in Cannes, please.
Je suis Robert des Pays-Bas.
Robert, Netherlands. I have a question for Isabelle
You
Huppert.
recently finished shooting a film with our Dutch hero Paul Verhoeven. Can you tell a little about the part and the project? And are you looking forward to a Cannes premiere next year for Elle? Because Paul certainly does. Thanks so much.
C'est un peu tôt pour en parler.
Well, it's a bit early to talk about this in detail. Yes, I shot a film with Paul Verhoeven. It was wonderful.
Le film s'appelle Elle.
The film is called Elle,
C'est tiré d'un roman de Philippe
and
Dian
it comes
qui s'appelle
from
O.
a book by Philippe Dian
O est
called
devenu Elle.
O, and O
Mais
became
c'est-
Elle.
J'espère revenir ici l'année prochaine.
And I hope I'll be back here next year or elsewhere. We'll see.
Bonjour, Médio Maïs de Metro News. Une question
Metro
pour Gérard.
News. I have a question for Gérard. There's a funny scene where you sign and autograph Bob De Niro. Has that already occurred to you in your life and happened? Did that kind of situation ever crop up? I don't like that kind of situation very much.
Remarque avec Bob, c'est faisable.
But with Bob, this is feasible.
Parce que Bob, il signe parfois des noms qui sont pas le sien.
Sometimes gives a name which is not his. I don't usually do that kind of thing. People ask for an autograph.
Parfois peut-être illisible.
The autograph may be illegible, of course.
Je le fais pas, je peux le dire.
But I don't usually do that kind of thing.
Je peux dire des choses.
I may say things.
Mais en fait, je le fais pas. Mais c'est d'ailleurs, je trouve.
But I don't usually do that kind of thing.
J'ai dit, t'es sûr qu'il faut le faire ça? Eh ben, oui, oui,
I was a bit reticent, and he said, "Are you sure I have?" I said, "Are you sure I have to do this?" And he said, "Yes." And I thought, "Oh dear."
Bonjour, Morgane du magazine Le Mensuel.
Morgane, Le Mensuel. In this film, one oscillates between reality and fiction. There are the scenes in the supermarket, which may appear rather long and trite, but that's daily life. This is very down to earth. And then you have the scene with the young girl on a tennis court, I think, who you meet in the middle of the night. She's very strange and surrealistic. So you have all these questions about death, the supernatural. Is there also a criticism of society, because the film is about a boy and his parents who didn't do their work as parents, and yet things enter too late? Can one read that into the film? Guillaume?
Vous adressez votre question à qui?
Who is your question for?
À vous.
It's for you.
C'est possible si vous l'avez ressenti comme ça.
Well, if you felt that way, certainly one can interpret the film in that manner. However, I didn't want to paint things in a gloomy manner. I wanted to call on the imagination of the audience. If you have other concerns, you can read other things into the film. The film may make you remember certain things in your own private life, but maybe that's your case. Maybe you don't know what you want to talk about it.
Oui, moi, ça a des résonances, évidemment.
Yes, obviously.
Avec un passé
there
familial.
Are links with my family past.
Ça vous suffit?
Is that enough by way of an answer?
Je prolonge?
Do you want me to elaborate?
Non, ça va?
No, that's okay.
Madame deuxième rang.
Radio France Internationale, RFI.
Radio France Internationale. Death Valley is the lowest place in North America, and it's the hottest place in the world. Is that hell? Did you think about a descent into hell when making your film? That's a very Christian dimension. I was thinking of Orpheus, for example, and others. Did you draw on mythology in this film? Because I felt that Death Valley was like a descent into hell. I have a question for Gérard. Perhaps you could talk more about your vision of Ukraine. I have no personal views. It's not up to me to say anything. Nobody understands much about Ukraine. It's a very complicated history between Ukraine and Russia. I have no personal views to give. I was shocked, like everyone else. I know Viktor Yushchenko very well. I love the Ukrainian people. But what can I say about such a conflict? If Crimea had been American, it would have been a different matter. I love Ukraine. I've been there often
M. Viktor Yushchenko, et je
with
vois
Viktor Yushchenko, and I still see him, in fact. He never wanted to be in power. What's nice about this person is that he came to power with his hands in his pockets, so to speak. He didn't want it. He's a man with a background in finance. It's very difficult to judge people. The same applies to Russia. There's so many different ethnic groups. I wouldn't venture to say that I know the situation well, that I can be a spokesman. I don't like war. I don't like conflicts. People die. Above all, what I don't like is those who are involved in the conflicts and who nobody talks about. The rumors spread and then they suddenly explode. To talk about Death Valley again, and what you were saying earlier on about hell, I don't know what hell is like, but I'm sure that people 100 or 200 years ago crossed the Death Valley with horses, women, and children. And that must have been like being in hell, particularly when you survive. You have to have an incredible temperament, a very strong character. You have to be hated in your country to travel across the Death Valley in the quest for gold and money. That's why these people crossed the United States, and that's part of American history. Guillaume, what would you like to say about the mythology in this film, or this mythological dimension? Have you ever been to Death Valley? It's easier to talk to someone who's actually been to Death Valley. It's quite surprising. If you just allow yourself to be carried away and swept away by the sight, and you set aside your daily existence. These are places that are incredibly powerful because of the climate, because of the weather. This all has an impact on our emotions, on our metabolism, and you end up in a state which is different from your state in daily life. And if you're happy to lose yourself in these very strange, odd places which are so different from your daily existence, then you end up in a state of mind and with ideas which can be quite traumatic, but in the good sense of the word. In other words, you can be taken into uncharted lands, so to speak. You can plunge into certain depths which will be very enriching. In countries like Mexico or places where there are jungles, these places can become absolutely hellish. Then you have a desert, but when you have a desert landscape, people appear more like saints. Death Valley is a form of initiation, and you can't do anything about the temperature. You just have to try to survive. It's a place where you struggle to survive. You have to have quite an intense inner life. You mustn't ask too many questions. What you try to do is bear with the situation and emerge alive. Hugues Daillet, Belgian television.
Gérard Depardieu,
Gérard Depardieu.
Bonjour, je suis ici. J'aimerais que vous rebandissiez sur quelque chose
qu'a dit Isabelle react to something said by Isabelle Huppert? She said that the characters are called Gérard and Isabelle in the film. You are both actors, known actors. You sign an autograph. This is a film which addresses many topics, including mourning. You have experienced that personally. Is it difficult to play that kind of a part? Does it make you remember many things you experienced? Was it more painful to play this character than in other films?
No.
It was no more difficult. It goes without saying.
Mais moi, je n'oserais pas me servir deuil de Guillaume, par exemple.
Well, for example, I can't use Guillaume's mourning, but what I can understand is mourning for a child.
Isabelle n'a plus revu depuis l'âge de 7 ans et moi
A
depuis
child
l'âge de 16
Isabelle
ans.
hasn't seen since he was 7, and in my case, since he was 16.
Le poids de ces deux lettres est
Imagine the burden for these two people. Imagine that burden when they meet together again. You don't have to look for these things within yourself. You just have to see the interplay between the two characters. I was an actor who had practically retired in that film. Isabelle is almost reborn in the film. She draws great strength from the experience. And in the film, it's a bit like me. I play the part of someone who's almost become a spectator. There's something I loved in the film and I found most beautiful. It's when they come together and they kiss. That's quite magnificent, because that's what really happens in life when you've lived with someone. Suddenly, they kiss, and that kiss becomes essential. And then he comes back as well. That's what really moved me. You don't need to reminisce. The fact that they kissed again was magnificent. What about the kiss with Gérard? Did you find it magnificent too?
Ils vont s'embrasser, mais ils s'embrassent pas.
They are about to kiss and then they don't kiss. But after we did.
Non, mais je précisais.
Isabelle, did you want to add something? No, I just wanted to specify.
Il retrouve, oui, des sensations, des hésitations,
certain feelings are rekindled. It's almost as though they were meeting for the first time.
Très longue absence.
After this very long absence, when they come together again, it's as though they'd known each other forever, yet they were meeting for the first time. They relive all these stages of their initial meeting. And they have to cope with this request. They cope in different ways. She firmly believes in this. He doesn't really. He's very skeptical.
C'est le scepticisme de Gérard dans le film.
Gérard is extremely skeptical in the film, but she really believes that this will happen. And that's what she came for. She is looking for that in Death Valley. She firmly believes that things will actually happen.
Il y a comme un transfert de cette croyance.
And this belief then is transferred to Gérard. She gives him this belief as a sort of a gift, a blessing, and that seals the relationship forevermore. He's very skeptical, and then in the end of the film, he actually believes.
Bien sûr, il y a les corps.
And then you have the people and the set.
Non, je voulais hausser les sourcils quand vous parlez des corps, Gérard.
Non, les corps, c'est parce que c'est sûr aussi qu'il y a le temps,
physical
la marque.
aspect. You have time and the marks of time. And the marks of time that are clear in our bodies, our appearance. It's inevitable. Yet joy, love, and sharing then take priority and predominate in the film. When bodies are old or sick, they become a burden. But of course, one can be very skeptical, one can become cynical about life. And then I stop being skeptical, I stop being cynical. I accept the way I am and the person I've become. Last question.
Antoine Julien, mon cinématographe. La question s'adresse à
I
Isabelle
have a
Huppert
question
et
for
Gérard
Isabelle
Depardieu.
Huppert
Je voulais savoir, avec vos carrières
and
respectives,
Gérard Depardieu.
comment envisagez-vous encore votre travail avec le metteur en
How
scène?
do you
Est-ce que
view
pour
your
vous,
work with
la direction d'acteur
directors?
a-t-elle encore un sens?
Do you think that directing
sinon,
is still meaningful now that you have so much experience? And if so, why? It's equally meaningful as when I started in my career.
Tout ce qui peut nous ramener à l'expérience ou au poids des rituels et des codes.
In terms of rituals and
De
codes.
s'en débarrasser. Voilà, si on se souvient encore
getting
de
rid
ça,
of rituals and
on peut
codes.
envisager l'avenir.
Well, I think if you can get rid of the burden of the past, you can better envisage the future.
Dans l'idée qu'on a appris quelque chose.
One learns throughout life, of course. Maybe at one point one may feel that one's acquired so much experience. But this film is a totally unheard of one. It's
enfin le théâtre aussi d'ailleurs.
Each
Mais encore plus le
experience
cinéma,
is
parce que le
new and
cinéma, la
original.
langue du cinéma, c'est totalement inédit. C'est une langue qui s'invente.
The language of films
chaque
is
fois,
a
selon les
language
personnes
which is constantly invented depending on the characters and the people you meet. So, in fact, one never has the feeling that
le poids d'un savoir ou d'une
one
connaissance.
knows everything. On the
On arrive
contrary,
avec la
as an
légèreté
experienced
de
actor, you
l'inconnu
still
et de l'amateurisme.
have to contend
beaucoup
with the
d'espoir.
unknown. You always feel as though you were new in the profession.
Laisse-moi dire un mot.
Let me say something.
La direction d'acteur, ça existe déjà avec le casting.
Of course, you have the casting, the director is deeply involved, and the producers have to agree with the cast. The producers are major companies or TV channels,
un budget,
and
et après on
they
choisit des gens
provide
qu'on
a
aura de moins
budget.
en moins à diriger et qui feront
And
l'affaire.
obviously, the
Ça,
idea is
c'est
to
une
choose the
chose que
appropriate actors
Trouver
for the film.
vingtaine d'années petit à petit.
This is quite obvious. I
Parce
have
que
discovered all
il
these
y a de moins en
aspects
moins
of
de
films
producteurs,
over the
c'est très
past
difficile
20
de
years.
monter un film
There are fewer and
sans
fewer
passer par
producers.
des
It's
gens qui
increasingly
connaissent pas grand-chose.
hard to make a
Alors,
film.
il faut vraiment être un metteur en
So
scène
you have to be
arc-bouté sur son
a
histoire pour
really
pouvoir
determined director, firmly decided to make a given film, to be able to
Mais
do it
c'est
the way
vrai
you
que
want.
ça commence là, la direction
Of course,
d'acteur. Ça commence
that's
par un casting.
where
Et
directing
ensuite,
starts. It starts
il
with the
faut
casting,
laisser le soin.
and
Il y
then
a suffisamment d'acteurs qui ont envie d'acter
there's sufficient numbers of actors who want to act for directors to be able to ask certain questions, and likewise actors can ask questions. Of course, directors don't want actors to go and sulk because they will become difficult.
Elle était d'accord avec le casting.
Why don't you ask Sylvie Pialat if she agreed on the cast?
Comme ça, alors, à la conclusion.
Bien sûr que non. Non, moi je sais pas quoi vous dire.
I don't know what I can add.
J'ai reçu le projet de Guillaume déjà tout écrit. C'est
The
pas.
script was
J'étais
written.
Oui, je peux dire, j'ai été émerveillé par le
I
scénario.
was
Et
swept away by
Isabelle et Gérard
the
sont arrivés.
script.
Enfin, tout s'est fait d'une façon tellement.
Isabelle and Gérard did everything in such a natural way
Ils avaient quand même déjà tourné
that
ensemble
I
depuis. Mais en fait, je me suis rendu compte que non.
thought they'd been
Donc, ça
in
charge.
films together
Enfin, le film s'est chargé au
for
fur et à mesure
years and years.
de beaucoup de choses.
And the film gradually
Mais,
acquired
non,
more
je
and
suis,
more things.
Émerveillé par le film que j'ai produit, ce qui n'est pas très
marvel
possible.
at the film.
Mais voilà.
Granted, I produced it,
ce que je peux dire.
But that's what I'd like to say.
beaucoup, en tout cas, bonne
Thank you
journée à
very
tous.
much,
Merci d'être
and enjoy your afternoon.
Je crois qu'il a